The government hasn't gotten everything it wants done this week, removing its contentious planned overhaul of the freedom of information regime from the agenda, possibly to return in the new year in a different form. The Coalition and crossbenchers have strongly condemned the bill. I spoke to the Shadow Attorney-General Andrew Wallace a short time ago. Andrew Wallace, welcome to the program. I wanted to start off with the government's FOI bill. So obviously this has been quite a controversial proposal. It's not going to be dealt with now until next year, is my understanding, and they're hoping to sort of, I guess, get the numbers, if you like, or get people on board over the Christmas period. From a journalistic perspective, I love the freedom of information requests. They're very important to the way I do my work. What are the major pitfalls that you see as a politician, as the Shadow Attorney-General, with the proposal?
Well, Olivia, the importance of the FOI bill or the FOI Act is not just for journalists, not just for parliamentarians. It's for community groups. It's for all stakeholders. It's even for mums and dads. When you operate under a parliamentary democracy, it's critically important that Australians are able to access information from their government about how their government is spending their money. Whether it's a community group that's challenging a decision of the Environment Department, whether it's a small business that's challenging a tender that they may not have won, there are a myriad of reasons why all day, everyday citizens should be able to access that government information. It's also incredibly an important tool for people like yourself, for journalists, and for people like myself as parliamentarians to try and get to the bottom of how decisions are made and why things were done a certain way. So the bill itself has been absolutely friendless. This would have seen significant changes to the way that the FOI Act operates in this country. At the moment, there is a presumption of openness, of transparency, that government will provide that information. But under the reforms that were being put forward by the government, that presumption basically flipped to a presumption of control. And we had real problems with that. There were many other issues around expanding the cabinet document exemptions. There were arbitrary limits going to be set on, if it was going to take more than 40 hours for a public servant to do research on you getting your material, they could just say, I'm not going to do it, it's too hard. There were application costs where there aren't now. So there are all number of things. There was not one stakeholder that was in favour of these reforms, not one. The only person that was, or the only group that was pushing this was the Labor government. I asked the Minister 15 separate detailed questions on the floor of the House in consideration in detail. She couldn't or wouldn't answer one of them. I've had all sorts of spurious arguments, from national security issues being raised. The Prime Minister even said in Parliament that they were receiving thousands of bot requests, which all turned out to be false. There is no evidence whatsoever of any national security risks as a result of the current FOI Act, and the government department secretaries could not point to one instance of mass bots making all of these spurious applications. So it was rammed through the House of Representatives, went to the Senate, and that's where it has stalled, because they simply couldn't get it through.
So is there any world in which the Coalition would try and move amendments to, I guess, change this bill in order to give it support, or in your view, you just think that this will continue to be friendless?
My position has been pretty hard line on this. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. That said, during the course of the last 10 days, the government kept on coming back to us with a raft of amendments and suggestions. But at the end of the day, it really demonstrated to me that the government was absolutely desperate to try and get this bill through. And I have to ask, was it for any other reason that just so the Prime Minister could stand up on Thursday night or Friday morning and say, aren't we good, we got this bill through?
Okay.
But I'm pleased that we held the ground. You know, I'll never say never. It just depends on, the extent to which the government is prepared to negotiate.
Well, on this sort of similar track, because obviously when the Labor government was first elected in 2022, it was on a platform of integrity and transparency. One of the key measures they took was establishing the National Anti-Corruption Commission. Now, I wanted to ask you about a story I revealed this week. So, Paul Brereton, he's the head of the National Anti-Corruption Commission. He has been consulting for the Inspector General of the ADF. It was believed that this wasn't happening on the NACC's time. He earns over $900,000 a year. But we now know through an apology letter from the NACC CEO, Philip Reid, that on at least 8 occasions, it did come under those work hours. I wanted to ask you, do you see that as an appropriate use of time?
Well, I'm reticent to comment on these specific allegations because they haven't been made out yet, and I'm also mindful of the fact that I'm the Shadow Attorney-General and Paul Brereton is a Supreme Court Justice in New South Wales, so I'm reticent to comment too much on it, only to say that I'm sure that there are, at the very least there should be appropriate checks that are being done on this, because no one is above the law, no one is above accountability. But what I would say more broadly is that the NACC is, really experiencing some difficulties in my view at the moment. I was looking at this the other day whilst I was preparing for Senate estimates, and the number of applications or matters that the NACC has done some initial investigations on, I think it's very pertinent to actually ask, and will be asking, how many people have actually been found to have conducted themselves by way of corrupt conduct as a result of a NACC inquiry? How many prosecutions have there been? With the tens of millions of dollars that are being spent to set up the NACC, how effective is it? I think the answer is not very. But we'll soon find out in the Senate estimates.
Yeah, I'll be keeping a very close ear on those proceedings. I wanted to ask you about Barnaby Joyce. I know he's a former National now coalition member, but what's your reaction to his decision to join the crossbench?
I've known Barnaby for 10 years. Barnaby and I have always got along very well. I've had him to my electorate a number of times. I'm really saddened by his decision to leave the National Party. I'm not a member of the National Party. I'm a member of the Liberal National Party in Queensland. I sit in the Liberal Party room, so I'm really reticent to get comment too much on National Party affairs. But when someone gets elected to, particularly as an MP in the lower house, there's a lot of work that gets done by a lot of volunteers, a lot of money's raised, a lot of hard work is done, door knocking, delivering leaflets, you name it. They had an expectation that Barnaby would remain their member as a National Party member. So I know that there'll be a lot of people that'll be disappointed by it. But look, it's not something I'm not concentrating on at all, to be quite honest. I am absolutely concentrating on my portfolio as the Shadow Attorney-General to ensure that this government is held to account, that it does and delivers what it said it would, and that's transparent government, and we're seeing anything but. I know that your viewers may not know this, but when the Labor government won the last election in May of this year, one of the first things the Prime Minister did was cut 18 senior policy advisors from the opposition. And this goes to the transparency issue we were talking about before with the Freedom of Information Bill. You can't have good government if you don't have good opposition. And one of the best ways to gut the opposition is to disembowel it of good personal staff who are able to research in the same way that journalists are able to research. We rely on good, competent staff to be able to assist us to hold the government to account.
Andrew Wallace, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Olivia.
Appreciate it.
Authorised by Andrew Wallace, LNP, Boccarina, Queensland.